I only made a small number of sheets and statements, slides and statements, because I hope you ask me a lot of questions about this process. Because for us, it took such a long time that a lot of things that happened we have forgotten or we don't like to remember, because it was quite a difficult process. The challenges, the biggest challenge was defining the result, because we won the procurement procedure only with a concept, an idea of what it should be. But what it was going to be exactly, we didn't know. We didn't know how to build it. We didn't know how it was going to work. We didn't know what the output specifications were going to be. So Erasmus constantly tried to make specifications to be able to check if we were going to deliver what we agreed on. So there was a document with output specifications, and some of you I already told the 5-minute standard, so it had to be clean and dry within 5 minutes, was one of the most important output specifications of the document. But it gave a lot of problems because we weren't capable somehow to be as dry as we promised within those 5 minutes. And so that meant that, like, if we use more energy, we were able to do it within 5 minutes. But we also said that this was only the CO2 amount that we were going to use. So we agreed on certain consumption specifications as well. So the output specifications were under pressure a lot, and a lot of debate about the specifications as well. And I think because Erasmus MC really had his eye on the ball, he knew Rinus de Viet was the contact person, especially for us. He knew what he wanted. He wanted a machine that was going to clean hospital beds. And the output specifications were only a means to come to the result. So because of the communication skills, I think, of Erasmus and EMS, we constantly had a lot of discussions, but we were able to constantly go back to basic about what is really what we want and why do we want it. And that meant that we had to adjust the specifications constantly during the process. I think the procurement process in total took 1.5 years, 2 years. Like
from the moment we...
when we knew that we won, we could start developing and building. I think it took us 2.5 years to implement the system. 2.5 years. Anja had a presentation earlier on this year, last year, and she told us that a lot of people within the Erasmus didn't believe it was ever going to come, the machine. A lot of people said that this is the worst procurement procedure ever. The machine is never going to arrive at Erasmus MC. We don't trust it anymore. We hear you talking about it, and you say it will be here in 3 months, in 4 months. I know some of you had contact with my colleagues at IMS Innovations, and I think you've asked Jeroen and Maarten, when is it ready, the machine? And we constantly told you in 3 months, in 4 months, and there were difficulties constantly. And it was because we didn't, we had to build upon an idea. For instance, we tried to make all kind of procedures to measure results. So we could test, and Erasmus could test if IMS was delivering what we agreed on. We had an ITP testing, and ITP testing is the testing procedure we use to measure how clean the bed is after the washing. We had a protocol, a document of, I think, 25 pages that describes what we should test at the factory acceptance test. We did a site acceptance test on what kind of specifications we had to test, how we had to test, what we had to test, what the values had to be. We had a complete document. And at the last week before delivering the machine finally to the Erasmus MC, we had to do the ATP testing. And in the document it stated that we had to test 10 beds per machine. Yeah.
I just wanted to, could you explain
ATP testing, yeah, ATP testing is a measurement procedure for testing how clean something is. It measures RLU, and it measures the microorganisms that are still left on the bed after washing. And you test it with a swab. So we had to test 10 beds before washing on 10 specific points that we agreed on with a swab. So Anja did a lot of swabbing. 10 points on the bed before, then it had to be washed, and then you had to test the exact 10 spots again with the swab. Yeah?
These procedures are official procedures, are made by whom?
No, there were no procedures, there were no norms. We had to discover their own. So Erasmus developed them with the microbiology professor that we have here.
Erasmus gave to you.
Yeah, but we did it together.
ATP measurement is a protocol.
Yeah, ATP testing is generally used in the food industry, for instance, but the protocol doesn't exist for beds. So here again, we use technologies that are used in the world, but not.
ATP means what?
It's a difficult Latin word. I can look it up for you.
Latin.
It's a Latin word.
Latin is good for me.
Yeah, just nail one. I think it's not really important as well. It's a protein that is found within microorganisms. That is what you measure. And RLU is the light that it produces, the microorganism produces, and that's what you measure. But it's not really important for this story, I think. We just had to invent a procedure and a protocol, and then we all agreed on the protocol in advance, and then we started testing, and testing one bed took us 2.5 hours. So if we wanted to do 10 beds per wash machine per day, we had to have a really big team of testers. So we decided, okay, this is not what we need or what we want. So we changed the test protocol. So my story here, the clue of the story is that you can think all these things ahead. You can think about all these things, but you never know how it's going to turn out. Because there is no standard, there are no protocols. You have to invent them yourself. And because we were really partners in crime, we weren't supplier and customer anymore. We did it together, we worked together. I didn't think anyone could see that we work for different companies. I don't think everyone can see it now. We work really closely together, and I think that helped. The trust we had from Erasmus MC, that we were honestly trying to do it well. We weren't trying to cheat them. We weren't to get money from them, or we were both trying to deliver a very innovative new concept, and they helped us. But you had to attract a lot of different departments to help us to figure this out. And the questions of other hospitals now is, how do you test it? How do you know this is okay? How are you going to do that in the future? Someone asks you maintenance. How have you arranged it? How much time does it cost? We don't know. We think we know, so we have made a plan together with Anja. We said we are going to do maintenance 2 times a year, and it will take 1 day. We hope, we think, but we don't know. And that's the whole story with this kind of procedure. You buy something, but no one knows how it's going to turn out. And that makes it really, really difficult. Because I think there were a lot of moments in the process where we didn't like each other so much anymore. Or we did. But when they had to talk about money, because I told you earlier, it's on the next sheet, but it doesn't matter. I told you earlier at the machine, you saw them measuring the height of the bed. We got 6 beds, 5 or 6 beds from Erasmus MC to test in Zwaag at the factory to make sure that the machine did its work properly. So we tested with the 6 machines, worked like a charm. Then we got the machine, installed it at Erasmus MC. We started testing. It rejected every bed that we put in. We found out that those 1,000 or 1,100 beds are not exactly the same. Whose fault is that? Is it And all the costs that we have to make, because we had to adjust the machine, the program, we had to hire a lot of software developers again to adjust the program. It took time. We had to again prolong delivering the machine. Whose fault is that? Is that the fault of Erasmus MC because they didn't check if all the 1,100 beds were fine? Is it the fault of VMARC because they didn't? They accepted those 6 beds and didn't check anymore, and you're gonna run into this kind of issues constantly. And I think the reason why it worked here so well is because we were all very enthusiastic about the concept, the idea, and we trusted each other. What Erasmus also did is they got TNO, Joram Nauta. I think most of you know him.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. He's involved in EcoQUIP as well, right? So he was involved in the project, and he did a TCO and COT sense check. You call it sense check, and they checked. They calculated what the CO2 measurement was going to be, CO2 footprint was going to be from all offers that were given by suppliers during the procedure. And we had to deliver exactly what we promised during the procedure, but you can't, because then you start building and then you really know what it is. So again, you think you have an independent outside party to check the output specifications, but still we have a lot of discussion about that calculation. Luckily for both of us, all the values are very much lower than what we offered during the procedure. So that means that even though we don't agree on the calculation, we're both fine with it because it's even better than what we said it was going to be. But still, so you get someone involved to help you. If it was going to be higher, what would have happened? I don't know. Maybe the whole project would have failed. Another thing I want to tell you something about is IMS Medical was the party that won the procedure. But now, as you can see, I represent IMS Innovations. IMS Medical is still part of IMS Innovations, but IMS Medical was only 2 persons, a little bit. They have a little bit staff, I think maybe 2 people. Okay, so there are like 4 or 6 people working at IMS Medical in Rotterdam. When they won the procedure, they were very surprised, I think. They didn't think they were going to win this big of a contract. And then they are very good at creating a concept and thinking of these ideas. I call them professors. They are really good at dreaming, but then they had to build a machine. So they started with hiring Weber Maschinenbau to build the machine for them. Weber Maschinenbau is a company that only builds prototypes, machines for other factories. So there was a supplier-customer relationship there, but when the process evolved, the investment that needed to be done by IMS Medical was so great, so big, they couldn't afford to do that anymore. So they together joined in a new cooperation called IMS Innovations. So Weber Maschinenbau, the prototype builder, is now also a part of the company. Weber has a different kind of background. They don't know anything about healthcare. They don't know anything about building more than once. Also, they're not quite used to building based on a procurement. They're building always custom-made, tailor-made for a factory. And there are technicians at a factory, so they communicate with other technicians, so they can communicate at a certain level. Here, they had to communicate with Anja, I'm sorry, but she's not really technical. So she wanted to speak about output, function, and not about all kind of technical things like osmosis water and things like that. That gave a big problem. The contract with Erasmus MC was also then transferred to a contract with IMS Innovations. It was a really big moment, I think, during the procurement situation where we had to revalue everything that we agreed upon in the prior project. But because we were so close to finishing and so close to developing the machine, I think everyone really, really wanted it to succeed. And I think that was the big issue why we succeeded. But it wasn't easy, it was really difficult. And I think you can't project, you can't foresee everything that happened. I think you just have to start a process like this and carry on and trust each other.
Maybe I can add something to that. I was involved in the contract takeover, and for a small company like IMS Innovations, our, let's say, Dutch tender law also isn't really flexible, so to speak, because they had to take over the contract as it is. So no room to make changes. So for new parties involved, they were, well, put it mildly, quite surprised that we couldn't negotiate the terms and conditions anymore. But luckily they were open to hear why we couldn't change it, and they remained as a party and stick to the contract. So we were very happy with that.
But when Weber took over, because when we had to deliver here, when we were building on site here, which was really funny as well, they were not used to working in a hospital, so they had to drill in the floor to make some holes to make sure that the machine was stuck to the bottom of the floor. They didn't ask anyone, they just started drilling in a hospital, and that's not really the way things go here. So they got reprimanded, and then they said, okay, how do we need to do that? So then you here in Erasmus, you have to ask for a work permit, and it takes 5, 6, 7 days, and that's not really. Weber's still talking about that, how ridiculous that is, and I'm always laughing at them, because they think if this only happens at Erasmus MC, they really think that if they're gonna deliver at another hospital in Holland, that it's not gonna work like that. So but everything, they weren't allowed to park here. They're not allowed here because Erasmus is in the center of Rotterdam, in the city. You can't come here with a big truck. You're not allowed to. So how do you get your materials up here? There were a lot of extra costs that IMS had to make to be able to deliver the machine here. That weren't in the contract as well. Also, there were a lot of discussions about a little wall inside the room, and then it was built on cost of Erasmus, and then it had to be broke down again, and the way, and I think that took a year and a half. A lot of discussion, and everything you invent as you go along. And the only reason why we got where we ended up, the success that it is now, is because Erasmus MC really trusted us to do well, and we were very excited. But also when we talked to outsiders about this project, everyone was still really enthusiastic and really believed in the concept. And I think that really helped us, because we were focused on the problems, on details. And all the people we were talking to on the outside didn't know about those problems, about drilling and trucks and work permits. But they knew what we were going to do, and they said, go on, I think you're really going to change things. And I think a big success that we didn't foresee is the fact that we not only have an innovative washing facility now, but we are also redefining the standard of cleanliness in Holland. What is clean? How clean does a hospital bed needs to be? There was no discussion because there was no technique to do it. So that is, and I think Erasmus MC as an academic hospital really likes that kind of discussion in Holland, and being leader in that discussion. Our professor of microbiology was on television telling things about it. We had a lot of publicity in Holland on the day journal. The broadcast of the news during the day. We had, I think we were on it for 10 times during one day. So we had a lot of publicity. And I think another big result that we didn't foresee is the fact that we are now redefining the washable bed situation. So a lot of bed suppliers are really enthusiastic about our product, because they are able to deliver more kinds of beds to the hospitals than they were before. And we didn't foresee that as well. This means that we are shifting the whole situation, and and Erasmus MC took a big risk, but is now really innovative, not only in its washing facility, but also in infection prevention and in what kind of beds they use. Questions for now? Maybe for Anja, because she was on the other side as I was. Or Jeroen about the procurement procedure.
Well, I think you may have partially answered this, but do you think you really got something you couldn't have got through traditional procurement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do think so. Yeah, because I think because we didn't define the standard of cleanliness ahead, we were available, or we were able to experiment with that.
And second question,
Well,
where does it go from here? I mean, you've now got this established proof of concept. You've seen it working. Is it going to be taken up by other hospitals, by other care institutions, because you have to wash beds in nursing homes as well as hospitals, and you can see an evolution of this. Do you think it will take off in that direction?
I hope so. I think so. We have a lot of interest from not only in the Netherlands but internationally. We will be visiting Arab Health as well, because we are talking in that region with a hospital. I think there's a lot of interest. The main obstacle now is that we have to prove to our future customers, the hospitals, that the beds will survive cleaning by VMARC. And not only once, but they will still be intact in 10 years.
Yes.
That's the main issue, and we have to start testing now. So I'm talking to a lot of bed suppliers.
Well, I think that there are two ways. One is the input on designing an hospital. I am an architect, and so I imagine immediately what can be the consequences. But the other also is the flexibility of your machine compared to the size of existing hospitals. Mm-hmm. Because did you consider up to here what is the minimum size of an hospital that could have advantage could afford your system?
Well, I get that question a lot. How big does a hospital have to be to invest in the VMARC? It depends on so many factors. If you are building new, then it doesn't have to be really big.
There are two different paths in my point of view.
Yeah.
For the new, the impact of your machine for the new, and the other is for existing hospitals, which are quite a bit, in Europe, even only in Europe. And we said 15, and it looks as if they are 26,000 hospitals in Europe. So
I think in Holland you see there are two kinds of hospitals. You have the hospitals that already clean on a central spot, and sometimes they do it mechanically and sometimes they do it manually, but then the impact is not as big. And we can adjust the machine. We did it for Erasmus MC as well. We built it especially so that it fits between the columns in this building. So I think there won't be an issue. If you are now still cleaning on the ward manually, then there's a big impact, because then you have really impact on the daily process on the ward. And then it still depends on what kind of elevators do you have, how is the hospital built. So I think we have to discuss, but also I've talked to hospitals that are battling with infection prevention issues on ICUs, and they are prepared to invest a lot of money to prevent that. So if you don't have that problem, then maybe the VMARC is not for you yet. And maybe you can better wait until you have a new built hospital. So I think every hospital is different, but every country is different as well. Because I've learned that in Germany, you have to, if you don't wash manually, so if you wash mechanically, you have to wash on 80 degrees, with 80 degrees water. So, but if you wash manually, you never can wash with 80 degrees. So I don't understand how the guidelines work. So I think the VMARC has to be a different product in every country, because every country has its own guidelines, its own specific problems, and we have to really look into also selling the machine in countries that are mostly like Holland to start with, but we're really developing now. We're redesigning the machine, and it will never be the machine as we build it here. It will be shorter. I've seen the first drawings. It will be 1.5 meters shorter. So that's quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So and also the robots. We will be using different kind of robots, different kind of software.
That's a question I don't know if you can answer. Who is financing all this?
Weber Maschinenbau, so the factory that builds prototypes is financing it now. So, but we hope to sign a contract fast.
That was my question. That for an SME, this was a huge innovation risk project, and it was also risky from the hospital. And I know that you worked together. Did you try to get any grant funding for the innovation project as an SME?
No.
If you were.
Well, I do know that IMS Medical got a grant for the development of the nozzle. I have no idea how big it is, but I know that in the development stage you can get some government grant on the research.
They are now applying for a European fund together with a robot company. So the company that builds a robot for the VMARC, together with IMS Medical, is now applying for some kind of European developing fund. I know, but it's really it takes like 1.5 years to get that fund.
Yeah.
So they couldn't wait for those fundings.
Yeah.
But luckily Weber is able to finance it up to now.
We were talking yesterday with on the Palo project with Thomas about when you go through this market sounding, you find that the supplier comes up with a concept, but there's an innovation project required. There's most of the national innovation agencies in the European Commission have got 2 types of funding. Well, they've got funding which they call PCP, pre-commercial procurement, and somebody said to me that they assumed this project was a PCP, and they couldn't believe that this was, if you like, done as a innovation procurement project because of the scale of it and the innovation risk.
Yeah.
And it was almost crying out for like an innovation agency to be part of the triangle.
Yep.
And we tried in another pilot project, transport, to get the national innovation agencies in Europe to get interested in this, and we couldn't get most of them to turn up to the meeting.
No.
So I mean they've got a role to play here, especially with SMEs.
I think the thing is it takes too long. In innovation you can't wait for that. It really slows down your innovation.
Yeah, but this project is, if you think back now,
We should have applied for it, yeah.
well, it might have been a shorter overall lead time,
Yeah.
depending on how fast they could work.
Yeah.
But it was certainly reduced innovation risk
Yeah.
for both parties.
Yeah, it has been.
But how to make that connection?
But that's a problem now because I'm an account manager. I want all these things. I want tested. I want a demonstration area. I want a test area. I want all these things, and they say, well, you first sell one machine, and then we can build this for you. So that's constantly, and I'm working together with the suppliers of the beds, so they can test for us in their laboratories, so that we don't have to build a testing area now. So that saves us money, but it's a problem, yeah.
Question here from France?
Yeah, I'm dealing with procurement on a daily basis, so I'm particularly interested in the market dialogue prior to the tendering procedure. So I wonder if anyone can tell me what sort of market dialogue did you actually have? What sort of market sounding?
You would sell something.
I'll do the
And
presentation.
eventually, what sort of tendering procedure did you apply?
If you can just hold on to the question, I'll come back to it later.
All right.
Yeah, Jeroen is gonna. We're doing the procedure reverse. So I told you about the end result first, and now we're going back. And I think Jeroen is going to tell you something about everything before contract now. Or do you have any more questions for me?
We'll think of some more later.
Yeah, thank you.
Come through.